Okay, well, hello everyone, and we're going to just quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Diana, and innovation coach at ASFM, and what we're going to share with you is the results of 16 weeks of of distance learning.
Yes, ditto. To what Deanna said, I'm Doug, also an innovation coach here at ASFM, and we are looking forward to briefly in just a quick half an hour trying to go through what we discovered. So we'll start off with getting going on why this is happening. Our jobs as innovation and tech coaches have changed. Maybe as a preface, just to let you know, we have been in distance learning since March of last year, and we have not gone back at all. So our teachers have been going through this experience for quite some time, and because of that, our role has kind of changed as well. And so the big reason why we wanted to do this is because we wanted a big picture of what did distance learning really look like at our school from beginning in nursery and going up all the way to grade 12. At this point, we've gotten up to grade 8, but we did start, or we've got data coming from nursery up to grade 8. And so how we did that is we just virtually went into each class. So we had teachers sign up. We went into team meetings and just let them know that we'd like to come in for their full session, which was approximately 2 hours at a time, and just gain experience and knowledge towards what they were doing. So we let them know that it was completely voluntary and that it was non judgmental at all. Like if teachers wanted feedback, we were more than welcome to, or more than willing to provide that, but they would define those areas. So they knew this was coming from like a very non-evaluative perspective. And what we wanted to do with that is to share that information with other educators within our community, within ASFM. And primarily what to do with that is to share with them so that they can better their practices and just learn from each other. And luckily, in the process of that, we decided that we would also share that with you. So that's kind of like the big picture of the process that we went through.
Okay, well, more specifically regarding the process, we went to the team meetings, the individual team meetings of each grade level to explain what we wanted to do. And so they could feel confident that we were not going to be judging or anything. What we wanted to see is what distance learning looked in ASFM, like firsthand. And then we sent out a sheet, they signed up according to the times that we had available as well. So they signed up, and like Doug said, we went to the whole period that they have, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on the grade level. And we were there just observing. Sometimes the teachers would also include us as participants, like as a student. If there were breakout rooms, we'd go with them. So that was really enriching because we had also the perspective of the students. We saw what they were experiencing. And at some point, also when we were in those breakout rooms, we have the opportunity to interview the kids as well and gain their insight. So all these observations, we took it down. We have a large collection of data in a document. And then when we finished with elementary, which goes up to 5th grade, we analyzed it, we summarized it, we found categories and some common practices and best practices and experience that we saw was working in our school for these teachers. So we made a large collection. We turned it into a poster with the highlights of our findings. So all the rest of the teachers can benefit from it. Then we went back to the meeting and shared what we found, kind of like what we're explaining with you. So they had a better understanding. We noticed, I mean, if we recommended to teachers, if you have the opportunity to go and observe another classroom, then that's really great. Like what we have the advantage of a very flexible schedule, so we were able to do this. But if there's an opportunity that maybe somebody can cover for you, so you can go and observe firsthand what's going on, you'll gain much more insight like we did. And now we're sharing with the rest of the community, which is Live Curious.
All right, so what we did is kind of categorize, after spending so many months in these classrooms, into like 5 different categories of the basic observations. And so one of those that fell into place quite quickly and quite early was looking at student engagement and the importance of these. And these are, it seems like these items might be quite obvious, but they're also ones that, if they're done intentionally, they have such a profound effect on students with their, with their engagement and with the way that they learn. Just that they're more focused, and they kind of have an opportunity to even just look away from the screen. I mean, these guys are as young as 4 years old that are doing this, and when you realize that after a while they've been sitting there without much of a break for over 45 minutes or an hour, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, it's time for us to get moving, or you guys got to move. So seeing the need for those younger students and younger learners all the way up to grade 8, and just the level of importance of that is so high. So these are just different examples of things that we witnessed over and over again, that saw that these were strategies that they would increase student engagement. And honestly, like some of the easiest ones were like in that first bullet there of just guiding students through energizers or breaks. We witnessed this a lot, is like kids would have the opportunity to have a break and they wouldn't necessarily take it. They would stay there and they would just want to talk to their teacher. They'd talk to their peers. And so it was sometimes needed to even just guide kids through that experience and let them, so that they actually were taking a break and weren't looking at the screen. So an easy example of this that, again, seemed kind of simple, but it worked so well, was the teacher just asked their students to look away from the screen, and they did. And so they just literally just turned their body and they were looking away from the screen. And then she called their attention back, and in doing so just asked, how many seconds or how long do you think that you were doing that for? And these were 3rd graders, I think, in this circumstance, and some were like, it was 3 minutes, and were 3 seconds, which it ended up being 15 seconds. But it got them thinking. But that small break, that they were so wiggly prior to that, and that small break meant it made such a big change. So just tiny little twitches can go a long way. So again, and it seems kind of silly, and I'm not a big fan of these as an adult learner, but prompting to respond with your voice or a physical movement or a hand gesture. But man, for younger kids, just show me that there's nothing in your hands. I can't even do it because I have my pen. But anything, make sure that you have your hands are clean, put your hands on your head, stuff that you would ask them to do in the physical setting worked just as well in a virtual classroom as well. So student engagement was a big takeaway.
Okay. Well, another of the big categories that we found was related to instructional strategies. And some things that we saw that worked really well, also to help it with the engagement, was that teachers use questions or cues or visuals, to keep the students engaged. And something that we haven't mentioned is that we were also very observant on the balance between teacher and student voice, or how much the teacher was talking or how much the student was talking or interacting in a way. And so having questions or prompting them with something for them to respond is something that we found key. When teachers send kids off to a breakout room, it's important that they have clear expectations, what is it that you're going to accomplish, or what are you going to bring back, or while you're in the room, is there going to be a role for the students and what they need to do? And so that will help with the breakout room, so the students accomplish the task. And model thinking, we saw this a lot, especially with the small kids. Just something as simple as make sure you are demonstrating what you're doing. Like if I tell the kids you're going to fold this paper in four, then I actually show it to them, because yeah, I mean, up here they can't see it. And the whiteboard is something that the teachers use very, very much. They see that the students, instead of showing them over here maybe how to draw or do something, when they show the whiteboard, the kids are actually seeing their hands do it. And that has been a big difference, especially with the smaller children, like for tracing or for left and right. On the whiteboard, they see it correctly. And set objective or focus for learning experience. It's similar to the breakout room. Like if you give them in advance, like what to expect during the next period of time. Some teachers post agendas. Some have just a picture agenda or a visual with an arrow moving down as they're advancing through the class. Some teachers don't talk about an agenda, so they're free to move throughout the class based on the response they see from their students. And like we were telling you before, vary the teacher talk time. Vary it in the amount that you're doing and also in the tone. So they respond to those changes in tone and increase when you increase the volume or lower. Although those things, we noticed the kids pick it up. We were, as teachers were giving their lessons or talking, we were observing the kids, and you can see their reaction to all these different maybe very small things that they do in their teaching, but they have a big impact.
I'll say just one quick thing to add on to that about like teacher tone is that it was something that also that you could witness within like a teacher's demeanor. Like if a teacher was in a rush and you could see that he or she was anxious to get things moving because they were worried about covering a certain amount of content in a certain amount of time, like kids picked up on that. Like we picked up on that. Like you can pick up on intonation very easily. So that anxiety that a teacher might have felt like definitely rubbed off onto those little kids, as well as a sense of calmness when teachers were just very laid back, but like also intentional and well-being. You could see just that lead focus, whatever the way that they were presenting themselves definitely rubbed on to students. So just even just their poise and their how you sit. What is it? It begins with a P. Poise and posture. That's what I was looking for. So transitions were another one of our things that focused on that were very interesting to see, and this was something that I think that teachers it took some time for them to develop, because virtually we expect everything to happen immediately, or at least with technology we expect to click on something and there's going to be an immediate response with the way that we interact with technology. And so we're remembering that we're not dealing with technology when you're dealing with students, that these are people. So if you're asking them to put something away or to take something out, that is going to take some time. So just remember being sure to allot that time, and also to, if you are in a time crunch or you want something to happen within a certain time frame, which makes total sense, is to set them up for success with cues. And so we saw some teachers do this really well. Some of them would sing a song, and by the time they finished the song, like the students needed to be back, or students would sing the song with them and they needed to be back in time. Older kids, some of them had just a straight up timer, like they could just see the time counting down. My favorite one, I think, was this, if this is going to work for us, was just, I'm a Mario Brothers fan, or was. So like you can find so many songs that are combined or like cut down to whatever time you want. So these kids knew this song like quite well. So by the time Mario like jumps up into the flagpole and that thing comes crashing down, like they knew they needed to be back. And so you could hear them humming that even like as they were returning. So it's having expectations like that, and where they know that they need to be back by a certain time, and yet it's also kind of fun, was something that students definitely responded to. Yeah, and having something ready for them to come back. Just like, I don't know, a lot of these things are similar to what would happen in a physical classroom, but kids get bored if they're finished with something early and they come back and they're just waiting and waiting for those couple students that take a little bit longer than others, which is fine again. But having some, you could be like teachers leading them through like a Simon Says activity, or finding them, having them search for something around the room that's going to be beneficial towards the lesson that they're about to teach, is just helpful, rather than just sitting still and kind of waiting for them to move on. So just making sure that they're occupied with something that kids responded to, and that we definitely saw be beneficial.
Right. Another of the major categories that we were able to find was the social emotional, and we know now that that's very important to strive in distance learning. And sometimes students need special attention, and breakout room is an amazing place to do that. In our all our distance learning classes, there's a second adult. There's either the educational assistant or another adult assigned to that room. So there's somebody that can guide that student. They take them to the breakout room and talk to them and then bring them back. So there's that one-to-one attention that sometimes children need. And they're anxious. You can see them fidgety, or you can tell their expression that they need to do something different, and they're anxious to participate and to talk to their peers or show something. So provide opportunities for that. Like, for example, we saw teachers that would ask the students to go get something, go find a stuffed animal. And of course they love to do that. And they're probably surrounded by their toys and their stuffed animals. So they would bring it with them, and then they would send them off to a breakout room with a partner. And there, now you can talk to your friend and talk about your favorite item, or the stuffed toy that you brought with. So there's an opportunity to talk and to show that toy that you're so attached to. And so just be considerate that we've noticed that some students are always showing their cameras, for example, like this, and you just see their forehead. They're there, but you can't see them. And so they might have a reason. There are things going on at home. Maybe the student is a shy person. We don't know really what's happening, so be considerate. Maybe afterwards you can talk to them. Like, we had a student at some point where, her camera was off, and the teacher was like, well, what's happening? Why is your camera off? Talk to them afterwards. And then she said, well, I was crying because this and this and that. And then she didn't want to have her camera on. So just be considerate with those situations that are out of our control or out of the student's control, and they might have a good reason.
So some of these are just tech tools that we saw being used consistently multiple times, and they're all, these are all within educational domains that are free. There are definitely paid versions that you can use that'll upgrade and get you more features. However, these are ones that allowed students to contribute, allowed them to have a say in what they're doing, allowed them to have a voice if they weren't always able to share audibly, and also provided the teacher with opportunities to use instructional strategies that might have been useful in person but are not as easily accessible when doing things virtually. So this presentation will obviously, well, you can find this on the website, but those 4 at the bottom have links there that you can test those things out. And if you haven't already, you might find there were some sessions that included these, embedded them into their sessions. So you may have already experienced some of them already, but these are just ones that we saw that were popular and didn't deter from the learning. I think that was the biggest thing, is a lot of teachers will hear about something that sounds really cool, and it might have a lot of advantages. However, the learning is not happening. and it ends up being more of a distraction or more of a game to students than it is an attribute to their learning. So just something to consider, just like you would in person if you're heading into a distance learning situation.
Okay, other findings that were just in general is like we were saying, consider the tone of voice and the teacher talk time. Like try to find a balance between how much the student is participating, and it could be maybe with like verbally, or maybe you have them write in the chat or do some hand gestures, so you know they're participating and they're active in a way in your class. And provide ample time for or frequent or breaks in between your class for snacks or water or bathroom breaks, so you can anticipate when the kids are going to become antsy and fidgety and anxious to move or to go and take care of their needs. So that's something that we recommend, that you do schedule them in and give those breaks to the kids. And for those that have another adult in the room, like at our school, all the classes have a second adult for elementary. We'll maximize the use of that teachers. In some classes, we noticed that the second adult was just in charge of muting, unmuting, maybe waiting room, things like that. And in other rooms where we saw an active participation of the second adult and they were team teaching and all that, the students responded in a much more positive way and they were all engaged. And it just sets a different tone. So that was something that we observed in many of the classrooms that we went to.
All right, so this was our visual. So when we finished this process, when we finished with a grade level, then we would head into the teams. And our teams are in the elementary. There are 8 teachers per grade level, and so these are pretty essentially, these different bullets or different sections are exactly what we just went over with you. Just rather than being strictly on slides, we just try to make it a little bit more visual, and attached different icons that might be meaningful to teachers as well. But this is what we actually reported back, and then provided them also with another document that would have specific examples of each bullet. But really the biggest thing, like Deanna said, it was that I think the thing that we had encouraged to teachers the most was to be able to try to schedule time to see someone else teaching. I mean, they typically would walk by each other's classrooms here and be able to pop in or see what someone else is doing. And it's way more secluded and isolated when you're doing this virtually. So if at any time that a teacher has an opportunity to get into another room, then that's amazing. And you can guarantee that they'll walk away with something, even if it is just one tiny little strategy or one tiny little hint of a way to improve the experience for the kids. It's definitely been beneficial. So I would say that's probably my biggest encouragement for those out there who are in distance learning, is if you have the opportunity and you've got people that assist with covering classes, to be able to get into other rooms and see what other people are doing. Learn from each other.
Right. Like Doug mentioned earlier, this is data that we collected for ASFM. I know there's a lot of research and a lot of books and things coming out throughout this year with distance learning. So, but we have just data that is relevant to ASFM, and we think anyone can benefit from it. Doug, can you click on the data deliverable link at the top? This is shared with you, so you can have this PDF with these are the highlighted observations that we made. But if there's the complete document is linked there as well, and that right there, yeah. So that's something you have access to. There we provide some examples and more of the observations that we had that we we summarized in this document.
Ooh. Oops.
Yes. So, going back to our title, this has been an ongoing process. We're not done. We're still, next week, we're going to be going into ninth grade classrooms and so on until we go all the way up to 12th grade. So from the time we started observing all that, it's been 16 weeks with all this number of minutes and so on. So it's a lot of time that we are fortunate to have been able to go and visit, because that's what we do. Doug, can you go back to this last slide? If anybody has any questions or wants to make any comment, we still have a few minutes where we can hear from the experience from other teachers, other educators, and we'll be sharing. Oh, there we go. If you want to contact us, we're showing our emails and Twitter accounts. There we go. The next slide, Doug.
I got out of.
Okay, I'll share mine. I have it right here. Okay, there. This is what I wanted to show. So if you have any questions or you'd like to share with us what you've been observing or what's your experience with distance learning, we'd love to hear.
I just want to say thank you. These are great. This is a great resource for us teachers. Easy to use, and like maybe some of us, we already do some of these activities, but now having all in one place, it's great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You know what happened when we were doing this? We would, at the end of we usually were able to stay with the teacher behind after her class and talk about what we saw and, you know, what and any recommendation we might have. And many teachers aren't aware of the good things that they're doing. They go, oh, but that's, you know, that's very simple. And it has a big impact on the students. So that's why we thought it was important to share, even if there are little details that you think, well, everybody's doing it. Well, not really, or they're not appreciating it as much. So that's why, you know, this is a very concise or a very small summary of what we found, but I think we think it has a big impact in student learning.
I'm glad that you said that, Jessica. That there are things in here that, I mean, that for some are probably like, it may not be anything new at all. And I think, I feel like that in a way that might be a good thing. If it's affirming to some people or to educators that, oh, good, these are things that we've been doing in our practice, and these are things that we weren't sure of. I'm not saying that we have all the answers or that our teachers are the best, but that they're 100% all the time. But I mean, this is after months of observations that these are things that work. And some people are just like doubt because they can't get into the other rooms. They don't know if what they're doing is effective or not, or they're not sure how to feel about that. So I think it's great. I'm glad that you brought that up, but I think it's a great point to, if this is shared with people, are like, yeah, whatever, we're doing this, then in our eyes, you're doing great things. And so that's something to take away that people could hopefully feel positive about.